Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today I decided to make this video basically introducing GraphQL for beginners. However, I'm gonna do this by building a very simple weather application where we're going to be using the GraphQL Weather API that I'm gonna leave the link in the description if you want to check it out. It is very simple and it will help a lot of beginners who are trying to learn GraphQL how it actually works. So we're gonna be building everything in React, and also, the code is going to be in the description. If you're interested, you can just check the description. It's going to be there. So basically, what we're going to do is I have here a React project open up here. I deleted all the unnecessary files, in my opinion, and just left these 4 files over here, which are the app.css, app.js, index.js, and the report webvitals.js. But they have absolutely nothing inside of them. It's just how it starts, right? I just deleted some stuff, but this is all you need. So basically, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the Apollo Client library to handle all the front-end API calls to our GraphQL. So the first thing we actually have to do is we actually have to install Apollo Client into our project. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say yarn add at Apollo/client. So if you're using npm, you can just say npm install Apollo Client. And we're also going to be using another library, which is going to be actually the GraphQL library, and that will allow us to access all the different type definitions that already exist in GraphQL. So let's say yarn add GraphQL. And those are actually the 2 packages that we're going to be installing. We don't need anything else. And after this is installed, okay, we have this done. I want to start my application. I'm going to open up over here. Let's see what happens. And this over here is basically the test, right? So if you've watched my video on GraphQL that I made previously, basically GraphQL comes with this kind of interface where you can test your API calls, and the API that we're going to be using has this pretty nicely described, as you can see right here. What we can do is we can execute queries, and I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see. We can execute queries however we want, and just get the information that, like exactly the information we want. So basically, for example, this is going to be a project where you're going to have an input, and you can basically enter the name of a city, and it's going to return all the current weather information for that city. So in this case over here, I searched for the city Vancouver, and I can literally choose what I want to receive from my API call. So I wanted to receive the name, the country, and the weather. And the weather contains all of this information. So this is kind of how GraphQL works. So if I didn't want actually to receive the country, I could just delete this. And if I run this again, you'll see that instead of saying country CA, it will actually say nothing, because we just told it not to give us this piece of information. So this is one of the great things about GraphQL, and we're going to be working with it throughout the video. So our React app just opened up here. So let's start inputting it some information that is going to be necessary. The first thing that I really want to do is I want to create a page, right? Just the initial page, but just for organization purposes, I'm going to create a folder called pages, and let's create our home page, right? Obviously, I'm not going to use routes. I'm not going to worry about any of that. This is just a simple component that we're going to be using to create our application. And the reason why I'm doing it this way is because I want to show you guys how providers work. So I want to have different components inside of our Apollo client provider. So over here we have our home component, and let's actually give this a class name. So class name, let's just call it home, and inside of here we're just going to put some very simple JSX. We're going to put not HTML, we're going to put input, a simple input of type text, and let's put a placeholder just so it looks a little bit better, and it's going to say city name like this. And let's close this, let's save it. I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see it better. But basically, I just created an input. I'm going to put a header over here saying search for weather. This looks weird, but this is just going to be very simple, nothing too hard. And then we're going to have a button over here that is going to say search. And we're going to handle the on-click for it later, but currently this is all we need. If I refresh my page over here, we can't see anything obviously because we actually haven't imported this component and called it in our app.js. So that's exactly what we're going to do right now. If we come over here and say import home from, and we can put over here /pages/home, and then just come over here and say home like this, then now we are able to see our home component appearing in our screen. It obviously doesn't look good, but we're not going to care about it, at least for now. So what happens is we're going to call this component over here, and with GraphQL we have to basically wrap around all of the different components that we want to make API calls with Apollo Client provider, which is not for GraphQL as a whole, but if we're using this library for making the API calls, we have to do it this way. And how exactly do we do it is basically we'll have to come over here, and first of all I'll create a folder called GraphQL, and that's just something that I like to do, but you don't exactly need to do it this way. You can put all of your queries and mutations wherever you want, but basically what happens with GraphQL is you put all of your queries for your backend, for your API calls, in the front end. So you can change that as you go. It's differently from when you're doing like a REST API call, because with that you need to define everything on the back end and you just make the request and you receive the data, right? But with GraphQL is a lot more dynamic, which is great for us. So that's why we're going to have this folder over here. But we're not going to touch on it right now. We're actually going to start building up our project so that it accepts GraphQL into it. So how exactly do we do that? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to import some packages over here at the top. So the first package that we're going to import is, we're actually going to import a bunch of stuff from Apollo Client. So from Apollo Client. And the things that we're going to import are very simple. We're going to first of all import the Apollo Client object over here. Then we're going to import something called in-memory cache, and I'll explain what it means when we get to it. But then we're going to import the Apollo provider. And I'm going to save this just so we have some styling. And then we're going to also import the HTTP link. And it's going to make more sense as we go through, but these are the packages that we're going to have to import. And what do we do now? Well, now we have to actually set up our application. What happens is with Apollo Client, you have to wrap your whole, like all the components that you want to have access to making this API calls, making the queries, the mutations. Well, you have to wrap it with a provider. So we can just come over here and very simply just write, wrap this around with an Apollo provider like this. And we'll also put this down here, meaning Apollo provider. And the only thing we have to do is we have to pass into here a client. And I'll explain to you guys what this client means. So how exactly do we create this client variable? So to do that, we're going to come over here and we're going to say const client, and it's going to be a new Apollo client. And we can pass an object inside of here, which is going to contain the different pieces of information that we need to pass in order to actually create our server. So what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, we have by default, we have to define how we're going to cache our data. And since this is a very small project and caching won't be like important, we can just say that this will be cached in memory cache. So we can say in memory cache. And this is just going to fix and like handle everything for you directly. So this is what I recommend, especially in the beginning. So what else do we need? Well, we need to pass our URI. And what exactly is the URI? Well, URI is just the link for our API. And I just realized that we don't actually even need this because we're going to get from a public API. So we can just pass the link for our API inside of here and it should work. So let me come over here. I'm going to grab this over here, this whole API endpoint over here, and I'm just going to paste it inside of here so that it knows that this is where we're going to be fetching our data from. And now that we have actually created our client, we can just copy this over here and paste it over here, which basically tells our whole project, our whole provider, that this is actually where we're going to be making our API calls. And now we're actually ready to start writing our actual GraphQL code. So what happens is when you're using Apollo Client and you want to make a query, There's the most common hook called useQuery, and it's probably one of the hooks that you're going to be using the most, which basically what it does is you just tell it, like you pass a GraphQL query into it, and it just queries the data like when you enter the page, when you load the component. But that's not exactly what we want here, because we want here to load the data when we click on the button, right? So if I come over here, we only want to, let me refresh this, we only want to actually load the data or search for the weather when I click on this button. So we're going to be using actually a different hook, which is also from Apollo Client, which is very common, and it's called the use lazy query. And if you are beginner and you've never used useQuery before, don't worry, both of them are exactly the same. The only difference is that use lazy query is a hook which can be called when useQuery is a hook that happens when you basically loads your component, right? So if you're interested in learning more about the different hooks, I have different videos on GraphQL, so I'm going to link them up here in the video. But basically, let's start implementing this. The first thing that we have to do is actually start writing our GraphQL code. And what do I mean by that? Well, this is what I consider GraphQL code. This over here is a query. You can define it as a query, and then you define a function, and it might have, like, it can have arguments, it can just be a normal function, and inside of here you can list all the different information that you want to query. And this is how GraphQL actually works. And we have to follow this structure right here because this is how the public API defined it. But if you were working and creating this GraphQL API from your backend on your own, then you would be able to define the name of the function, you would define what information you're sending. But in this case, we have to basically follow this structure right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to copy this because this is exactly what we need. And I'm going to come here to our GraphQL folder, and I'm going to create a file called queries.js, and inside of it we're only going to write GraphQL code, and we're going to export all of our queries that we want to have in our application. So basically to do that we have to import GraphQL from Apollo Client. So my keyboard is kind of bad, but Apollo Client, oh, I just forgot that we have to put this. Okay, Apollo Client. And GraphQL is just a variable defining that we're going to actually write a query or a mutation in GraphQL. So here we're going to write all the queries that we're going to be using throughout our application. So it's not going to be something specific. So we just want to export every single query. So for every query that we create, we want to create a variable and we just want to export it. So in this case, we're going to call it, let's give it a name for this query. Let's call it get weather query, something like this, get weather query. And in order to actually write your query, you have to write GraphQL. And I know this is weird, but you have to put the backticks, this kind of quotes over here. I'm going to try to zoom in so you guys can just see it. You literally just have to do it like this, and you write your query in between those. I know I hate this, but this is how GraphQL works. It's how a lot of different libraries work, but basically we have to write a query inside of here. So since we already copied our query, we can just paste it over here, and this is basically what we're working with. However, we still have to make some changes because you can see that over here we're defining Vancouver directly into our code when it's not actually what we want. And what exactly we want here is, first of all, we need to define this as a type. And what do I mean by that is, inside of here, we have to define this as a string. And if you don't know the syntax over here, it's because this is how you actually define types in GraphQL. I have videos, as I mentioned before, that go a lot more in focus on this. However, since we're not actually creating a GraphQL server, we're just following the format that a public API created for us. So we don't actually need to worry a lot about this. We don't actually need to worry at all. But just know that we know that name is a string, right? Because name is it is a string. We need to put the name of the city. So we have to just say that name is a string like this, and it should be fine. But we actually have to change it a bit just to fix it, because it is a bit different using Apollo Client to make your GraphQL calls and just using the GraphQL kind of GUI that they allow us to test our GraphQL server. It's a bit different. What we have to do here is, first of all, we're not going to use this curly brace over here. We're just going to do it like this, put query, and then the name of the function for the query, so we can just delete this over here. And then inside of here, we still need to write one more thing. We need to write get city by name one more time. And then we have to say that we want name to be equal to the same as a name property. And why do we do this? Well, to be completely honest, I don't know why the syntax is like this. It's something that I was very confused, especially in the beginning. However, don't worry. What this basically does is we're just saying that, and I'm just organizing this. We're just saying that we want to, first of all, make a query to the function get city by name. It takes one argument, which is name, and its type is string. And then inside of it, we're calling the function that exists called get city by name. And for the name, we're passing the same type as name. This is the idea, right? This is, I believe, the easiest way I can explain it. But basically, I know it's weird, but don't worry, you're gonna get it definitely. So let's actually just start fixing this. This doesn't matter, the kind of the indentation, but let's just leave it like this. I know it looks ugly, but this is the code that we have to write, and this is actually our GraphQL query done. The only thing we have to do left is just add a final curly brace because we added this one over here, and I hope it's all correctly combined now. Let me see. I'm gonna highlight this. We're only going to be able to know when we actually run our query. But this is the idea. We just copy and paste that over here, and now we have our GraphQL query done. So what we can do now is we can come to our home.js, and we can actually start implementing our Apollo client code inside of our components. So the first thing we want to import is the use lazy query hook from, let me just say from Apollo client, sorry, at Apollo client here. And let me just check to see if this is actually a hook. So use lazy query, yeah, I wrote it right. So we're actually going to import use lazy query, and what we need to import as well is we actually need to import the query that we just created. So I'll just come over here, and I'm going to say import from /, let me go twice back, GraphQL /queries, and inside of here I can just put get weather query, and it already knows that we can import this because we are actually exporting this over here. So what do we do now? Well, we can come here to inside of our function, and we can almost very similar to when you're kind of just creating a use state or when you're using different hooks that are built into React. We can just come inside of here and we can say const, and we can put here first of all the name of a function. And what do I mean by that is, with the use lazy query hook, we basically have to pass a function inside of here, which is going to be the function which we call when we want to make the query. It's a bit different from the use query hook because we don't have this function because it just makes it automatically. But with use lazy query, we have to put here a function, the name of a function that we want to use. So in my case, I'll just call this get weather, something like this. And then we have to put a comma over here and then pass curly braces so that we define two more things that we might want to get from our API call. One of the variables that we can get is loading, and the other one is error. And this is common with Apollo client. Basically, while the data is loading, this is a Boolean, so we can just constantly check if the data is actually loading. And if there's any errors, it's going to be cached and it's going to be displayed in this variable right here called error. So it's great because now we have a nice way of handling errors and also checking to see if our data is still loading, right? And then what we can do is we can just come over here and say that we want to make this equal to use lazy query. And we can put here, first of all, the actual GraphQL queries. So let's put get weather query. And then we can just pass an object, which the reason why we're passing this is because when we have a function which has parameters or arguments and we're using it like in GraphQL, we have to actually pass the variables this way. So we pass the object, and then we say variables, and then we say the name of the variable, so name, and then we pass over here the value for our variable. For now, just as an example, let's test like hard coding Vancouver over here just to check for the weather for Vancouver, and this should be fine. Now, when do we want to actually make this API call is when we click on the button, right? So let's just come here to our button and say on click and just pass a function over here, which basically just calls the get weather function. And this is exactly how we use the use lazy query hook, because now when we click on this button, the function that we define inside of here will make the API call. But how exactly do we see our data? Well, for now, let's just first of all write some error handling here by just saying if error, then I want to return something saying like error found. For now, let's just do it like this, just so we have an idea, right? And then if the data has been received, we can just say if data, and by the way, we also need to import data over here. I just forgot it. So we have to import data, and data over here will be actually the variable that like gets the data, right? So when we make the API call and we receive the data back, it's gonna be represented by this variable right here. So if data has been received, then for now let's just console.log the data. So let's actually check to see if this works, and if it doesn't, I'll just see what I did wrong, but basically we'll just see what's happening. So let's save this, let's come to our React app, and what's happening, error found, expected money sign, found name. So I'm gonna try to fix this and I'll come back in a second. Oh, okay, so in our query over here, in our GraphQL query, we actually have to put $sign over here because we're defining name as the variable, and it would make sense because then we define name to be exactly what we defined at the top here. So this is just a small bug, but we had to put the money sign on this one as well. So let's come here to our code and let's refresh this. Now we can see our project is loading. Let's check our console log. Obviously we haven't console logged anything, but let's search. And when I click search, it's searching and we receive back a console log. And apparently it is actually working. You can see that the country is Canada, the name is Vancouver, the weather is all of this weather that we can see right here. So it means that it's working. We just now have to implement some more stuff. For example, being able to make the query and pass the variables that we actually want to, right? So how exactly do we do that? Well, we're going to come here to our Visual Studio Code, and we're going to create a state here at the top. I'm going to create it before the call for the use lazy query hook. So we're going to come over here and just say const, and it's going to be a state, so use state. And for that, we actually have to import the use state hook here at the top, so use state. And over here, it's going to be a string. And basically, this is just going to be a state, which is going to be representing the city that we're searching, right? City searched, and set city searched. So what we can do is we can come here to our input and we can just pass an onChange event over here. And inside of it, it's going to grab an event. And we can just say that when there is a change in our input, we want to set cd searched equal to event.target.value. And now our state will change depending on what we write in our input. It's that simple. So what exactly does that mean? Well, now what we can do is we can just come here to our variable in our use lazy query hook, and we can just, instead of passing Vancouver, we can just pass the city searched state. And if we save this, we can come here to our project. Let's refresh this. Let's look at our inspect, and I'll just clear this so you guys can see it better. And what we can do is we can search for another city. I'll search for Rome, and when I click search, it's going to search for it, and we get back the city, and it correctly searched for Rome. Apparently it searched for a city called Rome in US. This wasn't the one I was searching for, but basically you can see that we got all the information back, and it works for every city. Los Angeles. Let's see if this works. I don't know if the API is great, but when we search for it, you can see that we receive the information for it and it works perfectly. So it means our project is actually working. But I'm gonna style this a bit just so you guys can make this like look better, make it look presentable, so that we can actually display our data. So to do that, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to first of all create a div down here. So a div, and it's gonna be called, it's gonna have a class name of weather. And basically what we want to display here is we want to first of all display the name of the city. So we're gonna have here something like called city name, and it's gonna display the actual name of the city that we have received. Then it's gonna display some pieces of information that are important. So let's take a look at what information we can get from this. So for example, we can get, let me see, we can get the name of the city, the country. Then for the weather, we can get kind of a summary. So we'll try to get the summary, the description of the summary. So something like clear sky, as you can see right here. Then let's try to get the temperature. So the actual temperature. So this is information that we might want to have. And finally, let's just get like the wind, right? That's just something random, but let's get the the degree and speed of the wind. So let's try doing this. Let's come over here and let's write out all of the information that we want. We want the, what do we say? We want the temperature. We want the description. So description. And we want the wind. So H1 wind. So obviously it won't look perfect, but we can see over here that these are the information that we want. So let's actually work to make this data appear, right? Well, we can just come over here, and since we're not using loading, you can use loading if you want, just for like some visual response of whether the data is loading or not. We're not actually going to be using this for now. Let's just delete this. Well, we can come over here at the bottom and we can just ask, okay, first of all, if we only want to display this information if the data has been loaded. So if we receive the data. So let's just say if data, then we want to load this. Basically like this. So let's just put this inside of here. And obviously it's going to give us some errors for now because we have to wrap this around with an empty tag. So I'm just going to put this empty tag over here. And when I save it, you can see it looks great. So basically what we're seeing here is we are not going to load the data like the city name, temperature, and description if we haven't received the data yet, which makes total sense because we don't want to load stuff that we haven't actually received yet. So let's try searching for Vancouver, and you can see that the data isn't displaying yet, but when we click search, it's going to search for the data and we receive the information here. But this isn't the actual information that we want to receive. What we want to receive is the actual city name, the actual temperature, and the actual description, and the actual wind or wind speed or whatever we're going to use, right? So let's start by city name. How do we get the city name from this data? Well, let's check in our response here in our console. You can see that the data is displayed like this. It's an object containing the property getCityByName. So we have to say data.getCityByName. Then inside of it, there is the name of the city. So we can just, for city name, we can just say data.getCityByName.name. So let's try to do this. Data.getCityByName.name. And let's see if it works. If I refresh my page, you can see that it changes to Vancouver because it correctly identifies what we're trying to reach, right? Then we want to look for the temperature. The temperature is a bit different because we not only have to go to the get city by name, but we also need to go to weather and then temperature, and then we want to reach for the actual temperature over here. So let's try doing that. Let's come over here and copy exactly what we did here, and let's just paste it over here. And instead of saying .name, let's say .weather, and then .temperature, and then .actual. And if we refresh our page, you can see that it's going to display the actual temperature that is displayed that we got from the data. Now for the description, it's very similar as for temperature. The only difference is we're not going to the temperature object, we go to the summary and then the description. So let's just come over here, and I'll actually just say like description, and I'll display the description right next to it and change this to summary and then to description like this. Let's see how it looks, and it actually works, right, as you can see. And finally we want the wind. So wind is very similar again to the description and the temperature as it is inside of weather, but we only want to see the wind speed. That's the only thing that matters, I think. I don't know a lot about wind, but let's just display the wind speed. So let's come over here and say wind speed, and let's just display data.getCityByName.wind.speed. And I'm also going to say temperature over here, temperature, like this. When we save this, you'll see that we received the information. It's all perfectly displayed. If we search for cities like Las Vegas and search for it, you'll see that the data should appear for this city. It works for every city in the world, I think. But you can see that it's working. Obviously it doesn't look perfectly, like it doesn't look perfect at all, but I wanted to make this video because it is a great introduction to how to actually implement GraphQL using React, because a lot of people get confused, especially because normally you would write the GraphQL API in the backend and then also implement the API calls in the front end. But believe me, it's as hard to work with GraphQL in the front end using React as it is to creating your GraphQL API in the backend. I have videos on both, which I'm linking in the description or in the cards here at the top, but I really think that it is a great introduction to distinguish how to work with them both in the front end and both in the back end. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any doubts, leave a comment down below. I answer every single comment. Subscribe because I'm posting every single week, 3 times a week, and I would really appreciate it. And yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I see you guys next time.